when you drink hydrogen water, it's primarily getting into your gut. It's interacting with your microbiome. It is interacting with hormones like GLP-1 and ghrelin and second messengers that play a role in metabolic health and brain health and so on. So drinking hydrogen water has these benefits, a lot of them which end up being systemic, even though the hydrogen isn't meaningfully getting into a lot of the tissues because of these second messengers that are in the gut and the regulation of the metabolic, and brain components. Then there's hydrogen inhalation. Now, when you inhale hydrogen gas, it is going through your lungs, obviously, and then it's rapidly dissolving into your blood, and it's reaching systemic levels throughout your whole body very, very quickly. Now, in this way, it's going to get to your lungs, obviously, a lot better than other methods, to your heart better than a lot of other methods, to your skeletal tissue, and also to your brain. Now, for the brain, it's important to note that some of the benefits that hydrogen has shown to the brain are from the second messengers in the gut, and some are from the hormonic benefit of hydrogen itself. So a lot of brain conditions, I think the future of the research is going to be looking at both drinking hydrogen water and inhaling hydrogen gas, because they are working under different mechanisms in the brain in that regard. Now, finally, we can, there's another application in hospitals. They can give hydrogen-rich saline on dialysis. That's, or like IVs, that's less applicable.
That's like highly specific, right?
Yeah, highly specific, right? So that's less applicable to the average person listening in. And a very interesting delivery method to get hydrogen to our tissue that I think is going to explode in popularity in the coming years is topical application. Bathing in hydrogen water, and using hydrogen-rich like gels and cosmetic products to get into the skin level. It's something I do at home with the hydrogen tablets. We do have larger hydrogen bath tablets, so we do have clinical trials on this. We focused more on like athletic recovery and soft tissue recovery and so on. But I have personally used topical hydrogen to pretty remarkable results for various, skin and soft tissue.
Wasn't there a pilot study for like 4 weeks and it showed the pore reduction?
Yeah, which is like a measurement, definitely like it's one of the hero measurements for like derm studies.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, it was a single arm study, so it's more like
there was no placebo group, so they couldn't take it was more of a hypothesis.
There's been, I think there's about 20 or so, maybe 15 to 20 clinical trials or case series, so like series of multiple case reports, or they're kind of like the single arm studies. It's very preliminary, more preliminary than areas like metabolic health and exercise performance, but it's very interesting research. There's been pore reduction, there's been like a cleaning keratinocytes, from hair. There's been a couple clinical trials on wrinkle reduction in older populations. There's been clinical research showing it can attenuate the effects of things like atopic dermatitis, eczema.
Yeah, I would think like anything inflammation driven, right?
That's where I'm coming from, and sorry to cut you, but I am very interested. So we know that skin aging and inflammatory conditions are a complex process. It's more of a symphony than just a single violin playing, right? In other words. Can you explain maybe the relationship between these skin issues and the underlying factors hydrogen aims to address? For example, oxidative stress, mitochondrial signaling, barrier dysfunction.
Yeah. So basically, I'm going to take a big step back.
Yes.
It's you'll see why. So right now, the way that we treat a lot of things is based on our prevailing pharmacological understanding of disease treatment, which is basically a single molecule for a single pathway or receptor that affects a single marker to either drive down inflammation or signaling here or there. Now, that was developed in the late 1950s, that theory. It was highly popularized by specific journals owned by someone with private interests that was later determined to be a fraudster and convicted of such.
Yeah.
But it really guided what we view as empirical evidence. And before these prevailing notions about medicine and treatment, which are very favorable to things that are patentable, emerged in the late 50s into the 60s and 70s, we treated things more systemically, system-wide as an organism. With this shift to the single molecule, single receptor, that's also when the rise of statistical significance came into play. Now, it is exceptionally easier to show something like a statin affects cholesterol than something like exercise or diet does. Lifestyle interventions tend to be a lot more subtle. They move many markers, in pleiotropic type manners that are a lot more subtle. Right? So basically this shift occurred. Now, this is why we need to step back, because we're looking at it through this lens of pharmacological understanding of the drug model. And a lot of people try and look at hydrogen through that lens, and it's a wrong lens to look at, because hydrogen at its core is a lifestyle intervention like exercise or diet, or fasting or cold exposure or heat exposure. It's something called a mitochondrial effector, but it's a little bit more too. So what I mean by a mitochondrial effector, it's hormesis for the mitochondria. So hormesis is an adaptive stress, something that we evolved to anticipate, that we adapt from and makes us stronger.